One of the most asked questions I get is, what is subspace and what's this all about? Well, in physics, they talk about 11 dimensions. You see, we perceive things in 4 dimensions: height, width, depth. These are the 3 dimensions of perception. Then there is the dimension of time, as we change things in height, width, and depth, as through time, the idea of the space-time continuum. And beneath our perceptions of these 4 dimensions, modern physics has shown that there are 11 dimensions in total. Now, I made the mathematical proof that there was a 12th dimension where all these 11 come back around together mathematically to form what I call subspace. Here we're looking at an animation of the 11-dimensional universe, but that 12th dimension is the capsulization of all of that together. I go over this in much more detail in the Sacred Number book and the Subspace book, which you should get to really see the true science in mathematics. And I believe that there's the final 12th dimension where it all comes back around on itself, and that everything in the universe basically can be observed as a single point. That at one level, things are still one point, and we are still all connected. We have the idea of a Big Bang as things started, and taught that all of this matter came through a singularity, so everything was conjoined and together, entwined, entangled. And what we know from quantum physics is that things that were once entangled, as they move apart, they still share a communication. So this is why I believe that we still have this communication at this level of what's called subspace. Our societies have developed ideas of psychic ability and the ability of the mind to affect things. I did the book and the movie Proof to be able to prove that this is really a valid process that is well recognized and can be proved. So knowing that the brain can affect things in the ideas of quantum physics, the observer effect, that the mind of the observer can affect what he's looking at. In medicine, we have to have the idea of the double blind because the mind of the researcher might affect the experiment, so we had to make double blinds. As we start to look back and forth, we're going to see undeniably powers of the human mind. Along came a field of radionics, where people were using different types of techniques, divination techniques, such as pendulums and point probes and muscle testing and all these other things, subtle muscle testing that helped to give them ideas of other parts of the universe. However, when these were tested, there was very little data being transferred, as that mostly the subtle muscle control techniques were controlled by the wants of the therapist. In other words, the therapist would control what he wanted. So could I make a device that was going to be something different? Well, Rupert Sheldrake had some ideas about the quanticness and etc., and his ideas of morphic resonance. And he said, if we take like the coins of the I Ching, and as we ask a question and throw the coins, the random events of how the coins fall give us information through a process of divination that tell us about the question that we're asking. Every society on the planet has something like this, whether it's tarot cards or my ancestors in Finland would throw horns of the reindeer into the fire, and cracks in the horns would tell them where to hunt. We have palm reading. All these different ideas were ideas of one thing that apparently is not directly connected, seems to have some type of shared connection, as Carl Jung called it, the collective unconscious. Well, how could I make it a better system? The pair people at the Princeton Energetic Anomalies Research, they had proven that there was an ability of the mind to affect things. And they had found that if they did these type of indeterminate events, that this would allow a connection. An indeterminate event can be seen as having a quantic perspective. In the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, They even talked about this quantic indeterminacy generator and its power.
The infinite improbability drive is a wonderful new method of crossing interstellar distances in a few seconds, without all that tedious mucking about in hyperspace. As the improbability drive reaches infinite improbability, it passes through every conceivable point in every conceivable universe almost simultaneously. In other words, you're never sure where you'll end up or even what species you'll be when you get there. It's therefore important to dress accordingly. The infinite improbability drive was invented following research into finite improbability, which was often used to break the ice at parties by making all the molecules in the hostess's undergarments leap simultaneously 1 foot to the left in accordance with the theory of indeterminacy. Many respectable physicists said they weren't going to stand for that sort of thing, partly because it was a debasement of science, but mostly because they didn't get invited to those sort of parties.
So there was these ideas bouncing around. In order to make an indeterminacy generator, first we would have to have an indeterminate event. Well, computers do not truly make random events. That random button, when you do it inside a computer, it actually takes a number from the timer chip. So that is not really truly random. And in order for us to have a real system of doing this, we would have to be able to have a real random number. To do that, I had to make a mathematical increment to be able to do this. That's a secret process, but I was able to do that. Now let me explain that inside the SCIO, or the EPFX, QXI, all the machines we've made, the subspace is just one small little part of a much, much larger whole. All the people who are competing with us, they like to think that all of what we're doing is just this random generator. That is not true. That's only a small part. However, that becomes a larger part if there's no data. In other words, if we're working on a patient that isn't there, then the subspace system takes over. So we can work on people at large distances. We can do this. So I started developing this system by building a true random generator and then getting the increment up to match the human brain indeterminacy. Because as Sheldrake said, the indeterminacy of the I Ching coins was a limit of 64. What if we could match the indeterminacy of the human brain? 10 to the 23rd. Well, I found a way to do that. An astounding work also, which is part of the secret process. And when I talked to Roger Nelson from the PAIR group, he was fascinated to hear that I had done such a thing. Then by having done this and put together this large super duper I Ching, as it were, to match the human brain, I would need to stabilize it, and to do this I took a Tibetan prayer wheel and generated a Tibetan prayer wheel into the computer that would generate mass amounts of prayers from all the different world positive religions I call them, and all these different prayers that would be spinning at the same time as we would be doing this indeterminacy generation. This was the first subspace system that I did in 1996. And we started using this with incredible, incredible results. Now here, a type of prayer wheel that is utilized. Now by taking all of the major prayers of the world, having experts to give us all the major prayers, constructing a computer prayer wheel that would be able to do 10 to the 13th prayers an hour in the super subspace system, meaning more prayers than there have been people who have ever lived on the entire planet Earth since the beginning of time. Very interesting. So this very, very powerful subspace prayer wheel that would stabilize the different ideas of our morphic subspace generator and would be able to produce a stabilization and prevent negative things from happening, negative events. Thus, a constant positivity prayer wheel spinning through the whole system. When we see patients, we often see that there's bad karmic energy or evil in their heart behind the disease. Hahnemann thought that bad karma, evil energy, was the cause of all disease. I don't think I agree so much with that, but it is a point. Many healers get sick and die early because they do not fully protect themselves from the bad energy. And when they work and get the bad energy out of the patient, that energy jumps into the healer. It might jump into the patient's family. It might jump into the healer's family. It might jump into the developer of the machine or even the developer of the machine's family. So to prevent this, inside the prayer wheel, I put a protection to protect the patient, the family, and the therapist, and the developer, and their families, so that any type of that evil energy in the patient would be taken out and dissipated away from these people, these healers. The developer's a healer, the therapist a healer, and to take that energy and develop it away and dissipate it into the universe away from them. Now, there's also another factor that sometimes the evil energy is not just in the patient, it's coming from somebody else. Quote, the evil eye. When that happens, we have to make sure that that evil eye energy is not going at the patient, not going after the therapist, not going into the families, not going into the developer or the developer's family. So we have in the prayer wheel that any of that evil energy directed at the patient, directed at the therapist, directed at the developer or any of their families, that energy will rebound back to the source of that evil energy. This is what the Bible tells us. Moses in Exodus 22:7, if a man gives his neighbor silver or goods for safekeeping and they're stolen, then the thief must pay back double. Moses wasn't committing a crime when he said this. When Paul wrote in Thessalonians, God is just, he will pay back trouble 3 times to those who trouble you. Paul wasn't cursing anybody. Paul was just writing the truth of God, that this will come back. When John of Patmos wrote in Revelations, give back to her as she is given. Pay her back triple for what she has done. Mix her a triple portion of her own cup. John wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just describing God's world. When David said in Psalms, O Lord, pay back the lapse of the neighbors 7 times the evil they have hurled on others, David wasn't hurting anybody. He was just describing God's law. In the Skio, Indigo, Eductor, these prayer wheels are doing many other things. But one of the things they do is they mirror back bad energy back to its source if it's coming from an outside source. This is a key part of the action. And people who are creating this ill will towards the developer, the patient, or the therapist, they see this as something wrong because they know that they are the source of the evil energy. And they hate this. But that's what they have to be able to deal with. Because what goes around comes around. And when they wish ill will on others, this program helps to send that ill will back to them 3 times 3. Just with a little extra kick to what's said in most places. Because it goes back to them to help teach them the lesson that really that you should love thy neighbor as you love yourself. In the 2006 World Cup, the people from Germany who were putting this on were worried about hooligans. They contracted me with 50,000 euros they gave me to write a subspace protection that would stop hooliganism in the 2006 World Cup in Germany. I wrote the program, made a program that would help stop any type of hooliganism, and it worked. There was literally no events reported. Very, very strange. They still couldn't quite understand how it worked, but it seemed to work. But they didn't report it when they had the World Cup in the Ukraine, and that was full of different hooliganism. So we can see the power of the subspace. The QXCI Skio Eductor, the world's first operative true quantum computer system, to bring this all about. And you see, here we have some of the ideas of how did I develop that computer system. Because when we look at this idea of quantum, we find out that there's a yes, no, maybe, that there's an indeterminacy principle built in. Now, many people have tried to construct hardware quantum systems, but I was able to make a software quantum system with a logic system that would follow this quantum event, thereby making a true quantum computer from the software aspect, not just the hardware. And this is how I was able to put it all together to make it work in the system, starting back in 1996, making the quantum biofeedback SCIO system, which now we all know and love. And we were able to see that this quantum leap of medicine, it really made it. As we developed the ideas of quantum theory and put it together, using all of the different research that had been done in quantum, to pull all of this together, to show that there was an influence of the mind, and that there was an ability for us to make a system that could interface through entwinement and entanglement of the quantum principles. And I put this all down into many books and put it down so that we could have this as the new form of science. And energetic medicine was changed forever. Judge the teachings, don't judge the teacher. Having proved this idea, the connection, this subspace connection, I started by putting all these things together. Bell gave us the theorem that any two particles once in contact will continue to share information. And Bell's theorem proved the non-locality of the universe. It's been shown in many other ways, as scientists have been able to do this in many other ways. And I developed a subspace theory that you can find in my books. I have books written on this, and how from the Big Bang on, there was a connection. And that we are still at one level of perspective mathematically, one thing in this expanding universe, this infinite, infinitesimal universe. And in an infinite, infinitesimal universe, a single point of consciousness will act as a point of all, reflecting the all. This is the basic idea of the subspace. Now, I started putting this together, and I started doing some of the initial work at Rio Rancho in New Mexico. Here's me playing golf. And here's the initial home of the AAQBT. And I was nominated for the Nobel Prize in some of the work that I've done. I started working with Matt Mendenhall and showing how Matt could increase his body mass with the idea of the hormone streaming. This is an electrical process. We did lectures at the Royal Society of Medicine in 1992. I taught classes at Semmelweis Medical University in 1996. I gave lectures at Singapore, Paris, many other places, even at the Nobel Prize Hospital in Sweden. State of Utah, Parliament in London, and I helped to save homeopathy in Japan. Now, AC Milan could cut their injury rate 90% with our machine, but could I make a machine that would interface with them on the field? And yes, we were able to do this, and we had fantastic results. I helped them to win the championship in 2004 with incredible results, and I built a system at their request to interface with subspace with the players on the field, and they had fantastic results. Such good results that one day I was working on the players, and along came one of the vice presidents, and he said, "There's a player, Roy Costa. And Roy Costa has never really scored a goal for AC Milan, and yet he was the leader in assists. But how come he'd never scored a goal?" And he said, "If my machine worked, then he should be able to score a goal." I turned on the warrior button, we took, and 10 seconds later, Roy Costa scored a goal. Incredible. This is the idea of entanglement, entwinement of quantum physics. And it sounds like witchcraft, but it's actually science. Now, instead of him turning to me and congratulating me on this incredible development of technology, he turned to me and said I was a witch. And things happened. We started to lose our contract with AC Milan. In order to challenge that, I told them, why don't you pick a team in the 2004? In the 2004 Euro Cup. I said, pick a team, let me run them on subspace. They chose Greece. Greece was 500 to 1, and some polls 200 to 1. The underdog. And I ran Greece, listed 500 to 1, and guess what? Greece won with the help of the subspace. Incredible. I then ran Detroit. Detroit won, and they were not favored to win. Kobe Bryant, because of this, bought one of the Skios, by the way, and started using it. The subspace was working. Many other athletes have used the system, and I did a research with Dennis Johnson, who was working with the San Antonio Spurs at the time, and he wrote me a letter about studies that he had done. And they won the championship with the help of the subspace. Then we worked with Novak Djokovic, who at the time was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I developed a super subspace system to be able to work with him while he was playing. We worked with Dr. Igor, and we were able to not just help him with the machine, but also with subspace. They won so many events. It was incredible. And he was 12-1 with the Skio Super Subspace system. Everything was fine, and then his girlfriend stepped in and said no. She didn't like the idea of a transsexual working with him, and then I stopped working with him, and now he's 1-16 in the finals without the Skio Super Subspace. In the Euro Cup 2012, they asked me to run Spain. Here's the dates in the computer where they asked me. They asked me to run Spain. I did. Guess who won? Spain. This was part of an organized study that was done from the Balkans. Then came Serena Williams. Serena Williams last had won a major in 2008, and her career, she had emotional frustration from footballs. This is a girl she tried to kill or threatened to kill. She had injury, emotionally letdowns, all kinds of problems. Radwanska has been using the Skio, but there was only one in last year's Wimbledon that had the super subspace, and that was Serena. I had a contract with her team to work with her, and she won Wimbledon with the super subspace, got her career back. She won in New York, the US Open, and she won the gold medal in the Olympics in London. So she was 3-0 in major championships with the Skio Super Subspace system. Novak was 12-1 with, and 1-16 without. Sounds like witchcraft, but actually it's science. Real science. How about that? And I'm not really a witch. Some people like to think I'm a witch. So you see, I got caught kind of in the middle between the FDA and the muscle testers. They think I'm a witch. And my science and dedication was so good, all the different science was able to do, that they decided to attack me. They think I'm a witch. Oh my God. A witch is somebody who thinks that power comes from them. Power doesn't come from the person. Power is there in the infinite, infinitesimal God consciousness. And if you're working with that God consciousness, then you're not a witch. Then you're doing good things to work with that God consciousness. And that's what I built. Now here in 2012, it was a real crucial time that came down. A challenge. You see, there's a super volcano that's 40,000 years overdue from eruption. And it was getting hotter and hotter every day. And we were going to get into a gravity well on this day that could have pulled that plug out and made that supervolcano blow. 2,000 people all got together with the super subspace system, and we networked a super subspace scalar field shield that would help to protect. And people said they saw this green shield developed in the world to help defend the planet Earth from that gravity surge. And what happened was very interesting. On that day was actually a minimum of volcanic activity. People said that they were able to see and feel that field. Very interesting. Did we divert this major catastrophe? Were we able to make a true subspace system? Well, I don't know. What I do know is the fact that the Earth was saved. For one reason or another, this cataclysm that could have produced such earthquakes, etc., didn't happen. All the groups of the SCIO systems in the world got together and helped to really make this super subspace scalar shield. And in the mind of the child, we could see that these things were possible, that there's powers in the mind, powers to control things. You see, because we did all these different things in different ways to help people to awaken their consciousness, awaken the mind, awaken the power within. And there is powers within us, powers to affect things. And having written all the books, getting them published, creating this system, I hope that all you people can understand that inside the basic cells of our mind, these things are there. There's an indeterminacy principle. And now we open the door to the new world, a new world of peace and harmony. Perhaps perhaps 1,000 years of peace and harmony. Who knows what could happen? As Max Planck said, you see, for a new idea to succeed, all the people with the old idea have to die. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that we built a super subspace system that's done so many things. I've only told just a little bit of the stories. I sat and told you all of the different stories that come in from the internet, the grand and wondrous stories of healings and different things that happen. It's totally amazing. I tried to just give you the highlights here. But I hope that you understand a little bit more and that you can see that this is a true, valuable system for the future of mankind and people. Well, Serena did not restore the contract, and without the super subspace system, she lost in the semifinals at the Australian Open, where Novak did contact me and wanted the super subspace to help him win the Australian Open. So we used it with him, and he won very handily. It was very interesting. And Novak even made an announcement to tell the world that we need to end bigotry and end judgmentalness, that we shouldn't be worried about people's belief, sexual identity, race, or color. It was very inspiring to be able to help him and to help this great man to try to help the rest of the world. In our 2007 study, we found over 100,000 patients where we tested them with subspace versus placebo versus the harness. And in the category of placebo versus subspace, there was a measurable effect seen that subspace worked. Of course, the harness worked much, much better, incredibly better in this study that had 100,000 patients, 300,000 patient visits. It was an incredibly large study done by over 2,200 therapists around the world. And this large world study, one of the largest studies ever done, showed that subspace did work. But the harness works a lot better. You see, testimonials are not studies. Stories are not validation. We have to be able to recognize that we need validation and verification. That's why we did the studies on the subspace, to be able to prove that it worked in a double-blind setting. So what we've seen through the sports and the studies and the karmic backlash and the proof and the mathematics of all these things, we can see that definitely 100% the subspace works. The super subspace works. And it helped to protect in large areas like the world and the World Cup. Very, very interesting, the history that you've now seen. But we all have to recognize that in the SCIO and Eductor, the harness works better, much better, incredibly better. But subspace works, and I hope now that you might understand a little bit more of the history of subspace.